You know what nobody tells you about getting older? It's not the aching joints or the reading glasses you can't ever find. It's not even the gray hair or the way technology seems to move faster than you can keep up. No, the real shock comes when you realize that the very qualities that made you a good person your whole life, your generosity, your willingness to help, your open heart, those same qualities can become your greatest vulnerability. And I'm not talking about some distant threat. I'm talking about what's happening right now, in retirement communities, in quiet suburban homes, in apartments where good people are discovering too late that they've been giving too much to people who were taking everything. Here's what's really going on. After decades of being the strong one, the helper, the reliable rock everyone could depend on, you've entered a phase of life where the world sees you differently. And some people, they don't see wisdom when they look at you. They see opportunity. They see someone who might be lonely enough to overlook red flags, someone who might be tired enough to avoid confrontation, someone whose kindness has no off switch, and they're betting that you won't recognize what's happening until it's too late. But today, that changes, because I'm going to walk you through the 7 most critical boundaries that protect seniors from exploitation, manipulation, and the quiet theft of peace that happens when good people forget they're allowed to say no.
Let's start with something that might feel uncomfortable, but needs to be said. The transition into your 60s, 70s, and beyond isn't just about retirement parties and grandchildren. It's about entering a completely different social dynamic, one where people start making assumptions about you before you even open your mouth. They assume you're fragile. They assume you're out of touch. They assume you have time to spare and resources to share. And worst of all, they assume you won't push back. Think about how your daily life has changed over the past decade. The phone calls from friends have become less frequent, replaced by automated scam messages and telemarketers. The social calendar that used to burst with activity now has more blank spaces than you'd like to admit. Your adult children have their own lives, their own chaos, their own schedules that somehow never quite align with yours. And in that quietness, in that space that used to be filled with noise and purpose, something happens that catches most people completely off guard. You start to feel invisible. Not physically, but socially, like you're fading from the center of the story to somewhere in the margins. And this is where it gets dangerous. Because that feeling of invisibility, it creates a hunger for connection, for relevance, for proof that you still matter in someone's life. And when that hunger is strong enough, you might not notice when someone shows up with the wrong intentions. You might not see the manipulation hiding behind a warm smile and a friendly conversation. You might mistake attention for affection and presence for genuine care. I want you to understand something crucial here. This isn't about you being naive or foolish. You've lived through more than most people can imagine. You've navigated complex relationships, raised families, built careers, survived losses that would have broken lesser souls. You know how people work. But here's what's different now. The stakes have changed. When you were younger, you could afford to give people the benefit of the doubt. You could recover from betrayal more easily. You had time and energy to rebuild what was taken. But now, every year is more precious. Every dollar in your savings represents security you can't easily replace. Every ounce of emotional energy you spend on the wrong person is energy you can't pour into your own well-being. This shift, this transition from being the provider to being the one who needs protection, it's one of the hardest psychological adjustments of aging. Because for so long, you were the strong one. You were the shoulder others cried on. You were the wallet that opened when family needed help. You were the voice of reason, the problem solver, the foundation. And now, you're being asked to do something that feels almost unnatural. You're being asked to receive instead of give, to close doors instead of opening them, to question motives instead of assuming the best. And that reversal, it doesn't come naturally to people who spent a lifetime in service to others. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the one thing that makes seniors more vulnerable than any other factor: loneliness. Not the kind you feel for an afternoon when plans get canceled. I'm talking about the deep, persistent loneliness that settles in when you realize most of your closest friends have either moved away, passed on, or are dealing with their own health struggles. The kind of loneliness that makes you jump when the phone rings because finally someone is reaching out. The kind that makes you say yes to coffee with someone you barely know just because it means you won't spend another day talking only to yourself. Research shows that chronic loneliness affects your health as much as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It weakens your immune system, raises your blood pressure, increases your risk of dementia, and shortens your life expectancy. But beyond the physical effects, loneliness does something even more insidious. It compromises your judgment. When you're starving for connection, you're less likely to vet the people offering it. You're more likely to overlook warning signs because rejecting someone might mean going back to the silence. And manipulators know this. They can smell loneliness, the way sharks smell blood and water. Think about how this plays out in real life. A distant relative you haven't heard from in years suddenly starts calling regularly. At first, you're thrilled. Family is reaching out. They're asking about your week, sharing stories, making you laugh. It feels good to be remembered. But then, slowly, the requests start. Small at first. Can you help with a phone bill? Their car broke down and they need a loan. Their kid needs money for school supplies. And because you're so grateful for the connection, because you don't want to risk losing this newfound relationship, you say yes. You keep saying yes. Until one day you realize they only call when they need something, and the minute you can't provide it, they disappear. Or consider the neighbor who starts dropping by unannounced. They bring cookies, offer to help with yard work, sit and chat over tea. It's wonderful at first, company without having to leave the house. But gradually the visits get longer, more frequent, more intrusive. They start making themselves at home, going through your kitchen, commenting on your finances, asking personal questions. And when you try to set a boundary, when you suggest maybe calling first before dropping by, they act hurt. They make you feel like you're being ungrateful, unfriendly, difficult. So you back down, and the intrusions continue, because saying no would mean being alone again. This is the trap. Loneliness makes you negotiable. It makes you willing to trade your peace for presence, even when that presence comes with strings attached. And the people who exploit this, they're not always strangers. Sometimes they're family members who suddenly remembered you exist now that you're widowed or retired. Sometimes they're neighbors who see an elderly person living alone and assume easy access. Sometimes they're even caregivers or service providers who start crossing professional boundaries because they've identified you as someone who won't complain.
Now, let's get practical. I'm going to walk you through 7 boundaries that every person over 60 needs to establish and maintain, not as suggestions, but as non-negotiables. These aren't about being unfriendly or shutting people out. They're about creating a protective framework that allows the right people in while keeping the wrong ones at a safe distance. Boundary number 1, financial privacy. Your bank account balance, your retirement savings, your investment portfolio, your will. None of this is anyone's business unless you explicitly choose to share it. And I mean explicitly, with careful consideration, preferably with legal documentation involved. You should never feel pressured to disclose financial information to anyone, including family members who think they have a right to know. If someone asks how much money you have, the correct answer is, that's private. If they push, that's a red flag. If they make you feel guilty for not sharing, that's manipulation. Your money is yours until you decide otherwise, and that decision should be made with a clear mind, proper legal counsel, and zero pressure from anyone who stands to benefit. Boundary number 2, unannounced visits end now. Your home is your sanctuary, not a public waiting room. Anyone who respects you will call first, text first, or arrange a time that works for both of you. This includes family. This includes close friends. This includes neighbors who think dropping by is friendly.
It's not friendly if it makes you anxious, if it interrupts your routine, if it forces you to entertain when you'd rather be resting. You are allowed to tell people, even people you love, that you need advance notice before visits. You are allowed to say no to last-minute drop-ins. You are allowed to keep your door locked and your privacy intact. Boundary number 3. Your time is not free labor. Just because you're retired doesn't mean you're available to babysit, run errands, or solve everyone else's problems on demand. Your time has value, and you get to decide how to spend it. If someone asks for help and you genuinely want to give it, wonderful. But if you're saying yes out of guilt, obligation, or fear of seeming unhelpful, that's a problem. You don't owe anyone free childcare. You don't owe anyone free transportation. You don't owe anyone your afternoon just because they assume you have nothing better to do. Sometimes doing nothing is exactly what you need, and that's valid. Boundary number 4. Emotional dumping has limits. You've spent a lifetime being the wise counselor, the listening ear, the shoulder to cry on. And compassion is beautiful, but there's a difference between being supportive and being someone's unpaid therapist. If every conversation leaves you feeling drained, if someone only calls to complain, if they never ask how you're doing, if they treat you like an emotional dumping ground without reciprocating care, you need to limit that access. You can be kind without being consumed. You can care without carrying. And you can absolutely tell someone, I'm not in a place to handle heavy conversations right now, without feeling guilty about it. Boundary number 5. No means no, without explanation. This might be the hardest one because you've been conditioned your whole life to explain yourself, to justify your decisions, to make people comfortable with your choices. But you don't owe anyone a detailed explanation for your boundaries. If you don't want to lend money, no is a complete sentence. If you don't want to attend an event, I can't make it is sufficient. If you don't want someone in your home, you don't need to provide 3 reasons and an apology. The people who truly respect you will accept your no gracefully. The ones who demand explanations, who make you feel bad for declining, who keep pushing until you cave, those are the people your boundaries are designed to protect you from. Boundary number 6. Medical decisions stay in your control. As you age, people may start treating you like you're incapable of making your own healthcare decisions. Family members might try to take over doctor's appointments, make decisions without consulting you, or pressure you toward treatments you don't want. Unless you've been legally declared incompetent, which is a formal process, you are the only person who gets to decide what happens to your body. You choose your doctors. You decide which treatments to pursue. You determine when and if you want help managing your health care. Don't let anyone, not even well-meaning children, strip you of this autonomy just because they think they know better. Boundary number 7. Protect your peace above all else. This is the master boundary that encompasses all the others. If something or someone disrupts your inner peace, if it makes your home feel tense, if it steals your sleep, if it fills you with dread or anxiety, you have the right to remove it from your life. Peace is not a luxury at this stage. It's a necessity. Your nervous system can't handle the same level of stress it once could. Your emotional reserves aren't as deep as they used to be. Every disturbance takes longer to recover from. So if maintaining a relationship, attending an obligation, or keeping a commitment costs you your peace, it's too expensive. Let it go. These 7 boundaries, they're not walls to keep everyone out. They're gates that you control. You decide who gets a key. You decide when the gate opens. And you decide, without guilt or apology, when it needs to stay closed.
Now that you know what boundaries to set, let's talk about how to recognize when someone is testing them, pushing them, or outright violating them. Because manipulation rarely announces itself. It's subtle, gradual, wrapped in concern or affection or family obligation. Here's what to watch for. First, love bombing followed by requests. If someone who's been distant suddenly shows up with excessive attention, gifts, compliments, and affection, and then shortly after starts asking for favors or money, that's a pattern. Genuine reconnection doesn't come with a price tag. Second, guilt as a weapon. Pay attention to phrases like, "after everything I've done for you," or "I thought you cared about family," or "you're the only one who can help me." These statements are designed to make you feel like setting a boundary is a betrayal. It's not. Third, isolation tactics. If someone tries to convince you that other people in your life are bad for you, that you shouldn't trust your friends, that your family doesn't really care, they're trying to isolate you so you'll depend on them exclusively. This is a massive red flag. Fourth, rushing your decisions. If someone pressures you to make financial decisions quickly, to sign documents without reading them, to commit to something before you've had time to think, slow down. Legitimate requests can wait. Scams and manipulation cannot, because they rely on you not having time to think clearly or consult others. Fifth, inconsistency between words and actions. Someone says they care about you, but only shows up when they need something. They promise to pay you back, but never do. They say they'll visit more, but only appear when it's convenient for them. Believe the actions, not the words.
Here's a truth that might sting at first, but ultimately liberates. Your circle is supposed to get smaller as you age, not because you're losing people, but because you're gaining discernment. You no longer have the energy or the desire to maintain relationships that don't serve your highest good, and that's not selfish, that's survival. Think of your inner circle as a garden. You can't grow healthy plants if the soil is contaminated with weeds that choke out the good growth. Sometimes you have to pull things out, even things that have been there a long time, to make room for what truly nourishes you. The people who belong in your inner circle now are the ones who respect your boundaries without being asked twice. They're the ones who show up consistently, not just in crisis. They're the ones who ask how you are and actually wait to hear the answer. They're the ones who add to your life instead of subtracting from it. And if your circle is small right now, that's okay. Better a small circle of genuine connection than a large crowd of people who drain you. Quality over quantity becomes increasingly important as you age because you simply don't have the bandwidth for superficial relationships anymore. Every interaction matters more. Every conversation carries more weight. So choose carefully who gets access to your time, your energy, and your heart.
Let's bring this home. You have survived so much to get to this point in your life. You've weathered storms that would have destroyed others. You've loved deeply, lost profoundly, and somehow kept going. You've built lives, raised families, contributed to your communities, and earned every bit of rest and peace that these years should bring. Don't let anyone steal that from you now. Not through manipulation, not through guilt, not through your own misplaced sense of obligation. Your peace is your power. Your boundaries are your protection, and your ability to say no, to close doors, to protect your space and your energy, that's not you becoming cold or bitter. That's you finally understanding that you matter, that your well-being is not negotiable, that you deserve to spend these precious years surrounded only by people and circumstances that honor who you are. So be careful in old age, not because you're fragile, but because you're valuable. Guard your heart, protect your peace, and remember that the people who truly love you will never make you choose between their presence and your well-being. You've earned this season of rest. Don't apologize for claiming it.